Here's what to know before you see Avatar Aang, The Last Airbender. Because none of us have seen it. How could we? It hasn't come out yet. This movie is a continuation of not just one of the greatest kids TV series, but one of the best TV shows of all time, period. And in just 3 seasons, this kids show was able to tell a story with distinct, in-depth characters and tackled themes about redemption, war and violence, destiny, corruption of power and politics, love and forgiveness, and so much more. Spoiler warning for the original show. The first season, aka Book 1, Water, introduced us to the world of Avatar. Not them. This world is divided up into 4 nations, each represented by one of the 4 primary elements.
Water, earth, fire, air.
In each of those nations, a portion of the population is born with the ability to bend or manipulate their nation's element. The only person in the world that can bend all 4 elements is the Avatar. The Avatar is intended to be the world's peacekeeper. When an Avatar dies, they are reincarnated as a new person, and they're always born into the nation that's the next element in the cycle. About 100 years before the start of our story, the world was forced into a war when the Fire Nation launched a campaign to take over the other nations.
Everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
Normally, this would be something the Avatar would try to stop, but he disappeared. A brother and sister, Katara and Sokka of the Southern Water Tribe, find Aang, an air nomad, frozen in a huge block of ice, along with his flying bison, Appa.
And this is Katara, my flying sister.
They soon realize that Aang is the next Avatar, and he's been stuck in that ice for the entire 100-year war. Katara sees Aang's return as a sign of hope, but there are others that want to ensure the Avatar does not come back. Prince Zuko is the son of Fire Lord Ozai, but he's been exiled from the Fire Nation until he finds the Avatar. He's also joined by his uncle, the famous General Iroh.
And great-grandfather all tried and failed.
Because their honor didn't hinge on the Avatar's capture. Mine does.
So Katara and Sokka decide to journey across the world to help Aang learn the other 3 elements so he can become a fully realized Avatar and end the war. Aang doesn't fully understand the gravity of the situation until he returns to his home and discovers that his people have been entirely wiped out by the Fire Nation. Anytime Aang experiences powerful emotions such as grief or anger, it triggers something called the Avatar state. This is when the power of all the past Avatars is channeled through him.
Aang, come on! Snap out of it!
The Fire Nation wiped out the air nomads at the start of the war because they knew the next Avatar would be born an airbender. They were specifically trying to get rid of Aang, but he wasn't there. Because the truth is, when he found out he was the Avatar, he ran away from his responsibility, which is how he got stuck in a storm and ended up in the ice.
Even if you did run away, I think it was meant to be. If you had stayed, you would have been killed along with all the other airbenders. You don't know that. The world needs you now.
Zuko's story isn't so simple either. When he was younger, he spoke out in the middle of a war meeting criticizing a general for wanting to sacrifice a group of young soldiers. As a result, he was forced to participate in a fire duel known as Agni Kai. Zuko thought the duel would be against the general, but it was against the Fire Lord, his own father.
You will learn respect, and suffering will be your teacher.
Aang, Katara, and Sokka eventually make it to the Northern Water Tribe. There, Aang and Katara become master waterbenders. The Fire Nation fleet, led by Zhao, arrives and launches an attack. Meanwhile, Zuko sneaks into the city to try and capture Aang first. Aang learns that the Moon Spirit is hiding in physical form as one of the 2 koi fish swimming in the city's sacred oasis, and Zhao plans to destroy it. All of our characters converge at the oasis where Zhao successfully captures the Moon Spirit.
Without the moon, everything would fall out of balance.
Aang then goes into the Avatar state and merges with the Ocean Spirit and fights back against the Fire Nation. With the Fire Nation fleet defeated, Aang's next goal is to master earthbending, which leads us to Book 2, Earth. After the battle at the Northern Water Tribe, it's become clear to the Fire Lord that the Avatar's return is a true threat. Ozai sends Princess Azula, Zuko's sister, to handle the task herself. Meanwhile, Aang is trying to find an earthbending teacher and is led to a young blind girl named Toph Beifong. Toph has learned to use her earthbending abilities not only to see the world around her, but to become a master earthbender. Despite her family's objections, she agrees to become Aang's teacher and leaves her home behind. Seeking some kind of strategic advantage against the Fire Nation, Sokka leads the group to a hidden ancient library in the desert. They discover that a solar eclipse is coming, which will render the Fire Nation powerless. While they're in the library, Appa is taken by sandbenders and sold to traders heading to the Earth Kingdom capital, the city of Ba Sing Se. But things are not okay in Ba Sing Se. Citizens are pretending that the war doesn't exist, because there's an eerie shadow group that has seized power from the king. They're known as the Dai Li, and some of their strategies include brainwashing.
There's no war in Ba Sing Se.
Zuko and Iroh have also come to Ba Sing Se, but they're actually living a relatively normal life within the city. But when Zuko discovers that the Avatar is also in Ba Sing Se looking for his bison, he can't resist turning back to his obsession. He finds Appa, but Iroh forces Zuko to truly think about his decisions in one of the show's best moments.
I know my own destiny, Uncle.
Is it your own destiny? Or is it a destiny someone else has tried to force on you? It's time for you to look inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. Who are you? And what do you want?
Aang journeys to study with Guru Patik to try and master the Avatar state by unlocking his chakras. While Aang is trying to unlock his final chakra, which is his attachment to Katara, he has a vision of her in danger and chooses to leave his training, which Patik warns will result in Aang not being able to use the Avatar state at all. When he returns to Ba Sing Se, Katara has indeed been captured because Azula has infiltrated the city and taken control of the Dai Li. Katara is imprisoned with none other than Zuko, and as a result, they have a confrontation that surprisingly leads to mutual understanding. Katara even offers to heal Zuko's scar with sacred water she took from the oasis at the Northern Water Tribe, but just then they're rescued by the others. This leads to a final confrontation underneath the capital. Azula and her Dai Li agents interrupt the escape, and Azula offers to restore Zuko's honor if he joins her. And after all he's learned, he accepts. No! Aang realizes they're not going to win this battle unless he can use the Avatar state, so he tries to open his chakra by giving up his attachment to Katara. Azula hits him with an advanced form of firebending, lightning, and Aang dies. Iroh fights off Azula's force just long enough to allow Katara to escape with Aang. She uses the sacred water she was going to heal Zuko with to bring Aang back to life. But Season 2 ends with the Fire Nation having taken over the Earth Kingdom, Zuko turning back to the ways he had abandoned, and our heroes defeated. Which leads us to the final season, Book 3 Fire. After Team Avatar has regrouped, they're still planning to try and attack the Fire Nation during the eclipse. Even though Zuko has received everything he ever wanted and is now the respected prince once again, he's still unable to find peace. At the same time, Aang is struggling with the idea that he may have to take the Fire Lord's life to end this war. The eclipse, or the Day of Black Sun, finally arrives. Team Avatar and their allies launch their invasion of the Fire Nation. A huge battle happens, but ultimately Aang reaches the capital to find it completely empty. Azula was able to learn about the secret invasion, and the Fire Lord has retreated to a bunker to wait out the eclipse. But Zuko finds and confronts his father to tell him that he's realized everything he was brought up to believe about his nation and his father has been wrong.
We were taught that the Fire Nation was the greatest civilization in history. What an amazing lie that was. The people of the world are terrified by the Fire Nation, and if we don't want the world to destroy itself, we need to replace it with an era of peace and kindness.
He tells Ozai that he is leaving to help the Avatar defeat Ozai. Zuko joins Team Avatar, which takes some convincing, and becomes Aang's firebending teacher. Aang seeks wisdom from his past incarnations about how to defeat Ozai, and they all tell him that he's justified in taking Ozai's life to save the world. Aang starts to believe he may have to change who he is to do the right thing, but then he receives wisdom from an even older source.
Since beginningless time, darkness thrives in the void, but always yields to purifying light.
Just before the comet arrives and Ozai launches his final attack, Iroh and Zuko finally reunite.
I am so sorry and ashamed of what I did. I don't know how I can ever make it up to you, but I
was never angry with you. I was sad because I was afraid you lost your way.
So in the epic conclusion, Aang directly faces Ozai. Iroh leads the White Lotus in an effort to retake Ba Sing Se. Sokka, Toph, and Suki lead an attack on the Fire Nation's air fleet. And Katara and Zuko go to confront Azula in the Fire Nation capital. Having found peace, redemption, and true power, he actually defeats her. So she takes a cheap shot and goes for Katara. Zuko sacrifices himself, which forces Katara to face Azula alone. But she's able to outwit Azula to finally take her down. Sokka, Suki, and Toph take down the fleet, and the White Lotus frees Ba Sing Se. It all comes down to Aang and Ozai. The battle goes back and forth, but Aang still refuses to take Ozai's life. He blasts Aang into a rock that pierces the wound Aang received from Azula, the one he got while trying to master the Avatar state. So instead of defeating Aang, Ozai's choice to return compassion with aggression only made Aang more powerful than ever because...
We're about to begin.
The Avatar state is restored. Empowered by all the past Avatars, Aang then takes control of the fight and nearly executes Ozai. but he takes back control at the last moment. Aang bends not the elements, but the energy within himself and Ozai. Aang's good energy prevails over Ozai's, which renders the Fire Lord completely powerless. And with that, the world is restored to an era of peace. Zuko becomes ruler of the Fire Nation, and we see all of our heroes coming together and looking forward to a brighter future. And in the final shot, Aang and Katara share a long-awaited kiss. Now, the sequel series, The Legend of Korra, takes place about 70 years later, and we learn Aang went on to found Republic City as a central hub of the world where all nations could live together in peace. And we even get to see a bit more of Avatar Aang through a few flashbacks. In those flashbacks, Aang is roughly around 40 years old, so they would take place about 28 years after the end of the original show. But the new movie, Avatar Aang, is set between all that, with the story happening 13 years after Aang defeated Ozai and ended the 100-Year War. The question is, what kind of threat will Team Avatar face after having defeated the Fire Nation? How will their characters continue to develop after all they have been through? And why on earth would Paramount not release this in theaters? Who knows, but let me know if you're excited for the movie. I'd love to hear what you think.